what I'm going to say now is not going to come as a massive surprise to anybody that watches all of these videos, particularly if you come and join us over on Patreon. It's something I've been saying for months now, and that is that Rob Newman's job is not a safe one. That Rob Newman was not the appointment of the board. That's not what happened here at all. I've been saying for months and months and months, if David Moyes goes, Rob Newman goes as well, because it was David Moyes that cherry-picked him. It was David Moyes that selected him. As I say, it's not going to be a massive surprise, but the only thing that's different is that now it's starting to get drip-fed out there. Particularly yesterday, I've got to say, particularly yesterday, because it was like senior source and all that sort of thing, that basically next season there will be a new head of recruitment, football director, whatever the case may be. Are you confused? So am I. It's all the different names for the jobs, isn't it? Recruitment, actually not recruitment consultant, that's something different. But head of recruitment, recruitment director, director of football, footballing director. I don't know. I'm actually going to completely leave Mark Noble out of this conversation because I don't really know what his job title is. Let's assume it's more to do with the academy and stuff like that at the moment. What the club wants to do is bring in somebody to completely oversee the way that players are brought into the club. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that David Moyes is leaving, although I think he probably is. If you asked me to put any money down on it, and I had to bet either David Moyes staying or going, I wouldn't put any money on David Moyes staying. I'd probably have a little sneaky side bet on Brendan Rodgers or Ange Postecoglou being the manager for next season. However, David Moyes can still stay, and I think if he wins the Conference League, there's a chance he can still. Nothing is ever too far gone in this crazy old world of football. And if David Moyes were to win the Conference League, let's be fair, he'd have a really, really good record, wouldn't he? I mean, you'd be looking at 3 consecutive seasons of European football and our first proper trophy since 1980. So, and I know some people might say that the Conference League is not a proper trophy, but I really do think Mourinho and Roma rubber stamped it last season, and I think it is. Look, is it as prestigious as the Champions League? No, absolutely not. But it is a trophy. It's a proper trophy contested by a lot of pretty damn decent clubs over European football. So, hey, look, I don't have a problem with it at all. But I think if David Moyes wins it, I think there's a good case for him remaining at West Ham. Don't think it'll happen, and hopefully you already know my views on it anyway. But anyway, if he does stay though, it won't be with Rob Newman as director of football, because here's the thing, or recruitment director, or whatever it's bloody called. Here's the thing. David Moyes appointed him. That's not good. That's not good for the club. That's not what the club want. And the club do not like the way that David Moyes has spent the money. Let's just go through the players. And what you've got to remember is you've got to remember the dynamic that we got here at West Ham. For a long, long time, when we used to call David Sullivan, and Mike used to call David Sullivan the dictator of football, didn't he? Sullivan wanted to do everything. Sullivan wanted to buy the players, and we've heard it before. We've had Barry Silkman on this channel, and Barry Silkman told us, not every player, but David Sullivan does like to buy players. So for him to relinquish as much control as he had wouldn't have been an easy thing. So there would have been an air of suspicion while David Sullivan was overlooking and overseeing what Rob Newman was doing. Was so too many Davids, isn't there? It was David Moyes who said to David Sullivan, I want somebody to come in and do this job to help me pick players. And that's what Rob Newman did. But you will notice, as I say, if you're one of these, I was going to say, you've got to have a very special something about you, really, if you watch all of these videos. Fair play that I've not driven you mad or to sleep already. But you will know that I've said this in the past, if that's the case, that there were suspicions within the club that he'd not really done anything in the game. He was a scout, he was a youth scout. That's what Rob Newman was at Manchester City. He didn't really have the credentials to be running a recruitment department at a Premier League club. So that was always the suspicion. Yet David Moyes appointed him. He was David Moyes' choice. That's absolutely fine. No problem with that at all. However, there was going to be an awful lot of scrutiny on him. And so this was the first time that he's properly had his fingerprints over all of the transfers. David Sullivan has had nothing to do with it. Not only has David Sullivan said that, David Moyes has also said that. So, you know, there's got to be a real conspiracy theory to think otherwise. Well, you know, not both going to lie about it, you know what I mean? And David Moyes has openly said in press conferences, his Diary of a CEO podcast, he's buying the players now. And Rob Newman is a massive part of that. Let's go through the ones that have been brought in. Because we've had pretty much a £200 million spend. Now, that depends on whether you want to classify or categorise Paqueta as 40 million or 50 million. If Paqueta, I'll put it this way. If West Ham win the Conference League and qualify for Europe next season, and Paqueta stays with us another season, believe you me, we're paying 50 million for Paqueta. All right, that's it. We'll be paying full whack. It was 40 million plus triggers and bonuses if certain things happened. Well, we win the Conference League, we stay up, we stay in the Premier League next season, we're in Europe next season. Those things are triggered. I'll tell you now, Lucas Paqueta is a £51.5 million player. Simple as that. So let's just call it 200 million, all right? Emerson, has he been a successful side? And what my point is, when you're assessing this, trying to assess it, what I'm trying to do as the board looking at a manager and a recruitment manager, recruitment director, whatever it might be, and saying, how well have you spent our money? So the ownership have given Moyes and Newman 200 million. So they're going to start looking through and seeing how much value have we got for that 200 million. First one, Emerson. Emerson, I personally would think, it didn't start off well for him. I think we've probably had our £13 million worth. I don't think we've had our pants pulled down over that one. I think that one is fine. Areola. I think the Areola's the first one. I think if I was an ownership, I'd be getting really, really cross with. It's not just a transfer fee, it's the loan fee and it's the wages. Basically, the whole package for Areola is about 40 million. Over the course, so that's basically transfer fees, his wages, and the loan fees. All put together about 40 million. I think the ownership, that's peed them off a bit. They're not very happy with that at all. Because he's not had a fair crack at a whip, and they're looking at it in the case of, it's not that they particularly love Areola, oh, go on, give a lad a chance or anything like that. It's just a case of you're asking us to spend £40 million of our money for someone you're not even playing. You're just not using him. So now what the ownership wanted to do, they wanted to buy the guy off West Brom. Johnston, is that his name? Was his name Sam Johnston? I might have that wrong. It was on a free from West Brom. That's really what they wanted to do, get him on a free for him to be back up. So they're very much looking at it now and thinking, well, hold on a sec, you've got this guy, he's 100 grand a week, he's from Paris Saint-Germain, it's cost an absolute fortune not using him. So they weren't overly impressed with that. Tilo Kehrer, well, he's done. He's mixed bag. I thought he started really well. Then he had a really sticky patch. I think actually recently he's played pretty well. £10 million from Paris Saint-Germain, I actually think he's a pretty good utility player, pretty good player for the squad. So would they be cross about that? I don't know. I'm just trying to look at it from their perspective. Nathan Gerd. I mean, 35 million. It's a big signing, isn't it? It's a big signing. David Moyes chased him. I think at times a Gerd looks world class. I think other times he can have an absolute nightmare. But I still think to be fair, I would be looking at them and thinking, well, okay, well, at least you bought a player and you've played him. It's not like Areola. So again, I think a Gerd, that's okay. I'd sort of let that one go. It's very nice of me to say that. It's not my 200 million. Scamacca, 35 million, complete and utter failure. And I think I'd be looking at that and thinking, well, it doesn't even fit our system. It does not fit our system at all. Breuer did, and we were going for Breuer, and I look at Breuer and think, he could have worked. Sometimes I look at Darwin Núñez and think, yeah, I get it. I know he might not have. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Darwin Núñez is an £85 million player. I don't think he's justified that. But when we were in for him at whatever, we were bidding £50 million for him. I thought, actually, that I can sort of see that. The way he can drift wide, he's fast, isn't he, as well? I sort of got it. He would fit in our system. Scamacca just doesn't. Scamacca's really good with his back to goal, and he's got a hell of a shot, but he's not good when he pulls wide, and he's not good. Well, he's not fast, so he can't. Like you saw what Antonio was doing against Man United, Scamacca can't do that, and that's really what David Moyes needs his striker to do. So I think if I was the ownership, I'd be looking at that thinking, well, that's not really worked for us. So I would look at that as £35 million wasted. He again, I know I've made a lot of predictions in this video. I'll either look silly or I won't, or I'll look right. But yeah, I mean, Scamacca, as I've said for some time, Scamacca, unless something totally changes, I can't see us having him here next season. So he's going back, and going back to Italy is what I mean by that. So I think, and we won't get the money for him. There's no way we get 35 million for him. Might be wrong, but just what I suspect. I think his value's depreciated. Cornet, you can offer up mitigation of injuries and all the rest of it, but it's not worked. At the start of the season, when he wasn't injured, Moyes was saying, he's not up to speed yet. He'd had a pre-season with Burnley. I didn't get it, really. Not sure. You'd have to go and have a look. Maybe even played a couple of championship games with Burnley. I'm not sure. I don't know. But it wasn't just David Moyes hasn't played him because he was injured. David Moyes didn't play him before he was injured. Now he's come back from injury, and David Moyes doesn't play him. I think it's £17 million wasted. I really do. Might come up and prove himself to be a good player. But under David Moyes, again, I'll be looking at it thinking, come on. The Paqueta one, I think it'd worry me. The Paqueta one, he looks top class, doesn't he? I mean, I'm delighted we signed him. I really am. But I think, again, I'd be looking at it in terms of, particularly when David Moyes didn't know how to play him, where to play him, David Moyes turned around and said, I've had a look at Lucas Paqueta at the World Cup, and I think I found out where to play him. It's pretty much what he said. That would have worried me if I was the ownership. It really, really would. And as I've said before, I don't even think it's just football. I think if you worked in a factory or whatever the case may be, or worked in industry or something, and you were the floor manager, and you needed a machine to help manufacturing, to help productivity, and you went to your boss and I really need this machine, and then the boss forked out and paid a lot of money for this machine, and then you just didn't use it, or you didn't know how to use it. I think the boss would have every right to say, why aren't you using that machine properly? I thought you said you really needed it. I'm trying to work out what it does. What? Hold on a second. That's not what you said. That's what we got going on here. So that I do think, though, that I think it has been a good signing. I really do. So I think it's been a mixed bag. And then you get to Danny Ings. I think Danny Ings is, in many respects, is the most worrying of the lot. Because I've heard some, when I say some people, obviously get into conversations on the comments on YouTube, and some people have said, justified Danny Ings, well, hold on, he comes in, he scores the goals. If the 2 goals against Nottingham Forest make the difference and he keeps us up, then that's all he was done. He was bought to keep us up. If he keeps us up, it's been a good signing. I think that's a real stretch of it. I think you've really, really got to play tricks on yourself to actually believe that that's worked out. That actually we'd only just signed this guy so he could come on as a substitute on a couple of games or whatever and score a couple of goals. I can't believe that. In which case we tied him down on this sort of, whatever it is, 3-year contract, 125 grand a week. Do the maths yourself. It's a lot of bloody money. Lot of money. And I think, again, the worrying thing is David Moyes doesn't suit David Moyes' system at all. And I guess a conspiracy theory that it's a Sullivan special. Sullivan went and bought Danny Ings. He didn't. David Moyes has said he didn't. And Sullivan, a source close to the club, is pretty annoyed that we signed him. So it's just not. Look, listen. I'm not sat here protecting David Sullivan, make no mistake about it. Watch myself and Gio's video the other day about the season ticket prices. When David Sullivan gets it when he deserves to on this channel, I can tell you that now. But I think on this particular one, I think it's fair to say he has given Rob Newman and David Moyes plenty of money. And I'm looking at it now, and I can understand why their point of view, they're probably thinking, actually, we're not going to do this. And I think that does make it really, really interesting. In many respects, I think we were caught between the devil and the deep blue sea on this one, which is, because I don't think it's worked, so I should say that. I'm looking at it from an ownership point of view. I think only half of them are worked out. I really do. And just because a player's not been played, that doesn't mean it works out. As I say, we can offer the excuses for Cornet, and we can say, Cornet might be good. Well, he might be, but it still hasn't worked out. Under this manager, Cornet doesn't work out. Under this manager, Scamacca doesn't work out. Under this manager, Danny Ings doesn't work out. Under this manager, Areola doesn't work out. That's half of them. It's a lot of money's worth for players. It really is. And a lot of them, when it comes to the crunch, do not get selected for the team in the big games. They really don't. He spent a lot of money and he's reverted to type, and I'm delighted he's kept us up, and I hope he keeps us in the Premier League. In the I hope he wins us the Conference League. I really do. But I'm just saying, from my point of view, I think the recruitment has not been great. It's too much of it. Man United can afford to buy a player and it don't work out for 35 million. A lot of clubs can. West Ham can't. We spend that sort of money. We cannot afford for it not to work out. And it's unfortunately didn't have a lot of credit in the bank either, because it was Moyes that really pushed for Vlasic the season before. And I think what also hasn't helped is when David Moyes says things himself, like, "Oh, I had the chance to bring in Julian Alvarez, but I didn't want to. I didn't think, that doesn't help him when he's got the opportunity to bring in Caicedo from Independiente, and he thought no, he wasn't too sure about him, but he brought Alex Crowlin on loan instead. This does not help him at all. The devil on the deep blue sea bit, as far as I'm concerned, is looking at David Sullivan and thinking, well, what I don't want to do is I don't want it to be taken away from Rob Newman, and David Sullivan does all the recruitment again. So I'm actually quite pleased to hear that actually it's going to be neither. It's actually going to be a specialist, a senior recruitment director, whatever the case may be, comes in. This is going to be difficult for David Moyes if he stays, because basically the football director, I've found so many ways to say the name director of football, whatever it is going to be David Moyes' boss. That's right. Because that guy's job is not just to oversee and bring in footballers, of course. It's not only to oversee recruitment. It's actually when you need a manager, they then go and recruit the manager as well. So that's very important. But that's the right way round. David Moyes should not be the recruitment director's boss. He just shouldn't be. He absolutely shouldn't be. And that's the wrong way round. It hasn't worked. It didn't work under Pellegrini particularly well, let's be fair. Huselos was director of football, was his mate. They both their sons. I can't remember what his name was. I think it was Juan Pellegrini, and I don't know what Huselos Jr. Was called. But the sons were in there. It was all wrong. Everything was very, very wrong. So anyway, it's interesting West Ham news. It is really, really interesting West Ham news. It is going to be in fact, I've already been talking for far too long. It's going to be a season's transition, was what I was going to say. That's a video for another time. We've done 17 minutes. Appreciate you watching. Thank you for listening. If you like the video, do please stick a thumbs up on it. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. If you didn't like the video, then I've got to say, you've been very, very patient to sit here and listen to me for 17 and a half minutes if you didn't like it. But I thank you very much anyway for your patience. I will catch you all tomorrow.